Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and today's video is going to be a fun one. In today's video, we've got a crazy triple Shadow team in the Open Great League featuring Shadow Rhyperior, Shadow Frostlass, and Shadow Malamar. These battles were submitted to the channel by a member of the community, Kesu1310, so many thanks for the battle submission. Now, it goes without saying, this is not a team that is recommended if you're looking to gain elo. This trainer post-legend just decided to have some triple Shadow fun, and if the submission note is to be believed, had some incredible battles along the way. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches. And in game number 1, Shadow Rhyperior is staring down Shadow Malamar. This is a tricky matchup for the Shadow Rhyperior. A Shadow Rhyperior is going to get outpaced to the first move, and even a foul play would do way too much damage. Rhyperior, these mud slaps are dealing so much damage though, that's going to force a switch out by the opponent, and they're going to end up sending in Diggersby, which will be answered with the Shadow Frostlass. Fire Punch does do quite a lot of damage, the Shadow Powder Snows eating through the Diggersby's remaining health, and Frostlass forcing the charge attack priority tie here, but Diggersby at a shield advantage is more than happy just to shield back. Fire Punch is going to land, down goes Shadow Frostlass, and now it's going to be up to Shadow Malamar to get rid of the Diggersby. Diggersby going to get outpaced here. Superpower will easily be enough to pick up the knockout unless they shield. Opponent is going to shield and protect the Diggersby. Diggersby banks a ton of energy, sending back in their Shadow Malamar, but they will get outpaced here. Superpower is reached, down goes the Shadow Malamar. The opponent still does have a ton of energy stored on that Diggersby for later, but they're going to send in their final Pokemon, which is revealed to be Tinkaton. Tinkaton going to take big damage here from the Mud Slaps. That's going to be a resistant Rock Wrecker, and this poor Tinkaton gets absolutely deleted. They go for the Bulldoze. Rhyperior is going to shield, get a full farm down. In comes Diggersby. It stored all that energy from earlier, but it doesn't matter. It loses charge attack priority. Down goes the Diggersby, and against all odds, that looked really tough in the mid game. That's going to end up being a game 1 win. Moving to game number 2, Shadow Rhyperior is going to be staring down, oh my goodness, Shadow Typhlosion, what a lead. Immediate switch out into a Drapion. Trainer, you cannot run this weak to Mud Slap. The opponent now going to be met here with the Shadow Malamar. But I worry that by not staying in with the Rhyperior, potentially switch advantage could be forced, and that would be a big problem. And Drapion is going to look to force switch advantage here, as it is going to commit the shield, fire off the Aqua Tail, and with switch advantage lost, that does mean that, unfortunately, things are going to get quite complicated. In comes the Frostlass. Frostlass really going to need to be able to force the final shield onto the Typhlosion when it re-enters the field of play. So that's the idea. Just go for energy here. In comes the Typhlosion. Big damage in the back is going to be a Shadow Marowak. And let's see this Rock Wrecker damage. Rock Wrecker is going to be resisted here. Oh my goodness. It's a simultaneous KO. In comes Typhlosion, but with all this Shadow Frostlass energy, I think this might actually still be a win. Shadow Ball is going to be shielded. Frostlass just needs to get to the move. It can only get the Avalanche. Is it enough? I know it's resisted, but it's Shadow versus Shadow. Avalanche KOs. I was worried when switch advantage was lost, but Shadow Rhyperior and the Shadow Frostlass, that damage output is just absolutely ridiculous. Moving into the next match, Shadow Rhyperior into Talonflame. These resisted Incinerates are adding up. Opponent gonna save switch into a Shadow Drapion. And that's really not going to be much better of an answer here. They shield the Breaking Swipe. It ends up being a charge attack priority tie, and it's a Shadow Rhyperior. It absolutely has to respect the Aqua Tail. Can Rhyperior get the farm down here? Not going to risk it. Instead, going to bank the energy. Not wanting to risk the opponent getting damage registration there. Instead, just sending in the Malamar, and Malamar does get a nice farm down. The opponent did bank a move on the Talonflame, but they will have to throw it pretty immediately if they send it in, because if they don't, and they didn't, then they're going to be hit with a foul play. And foul play, they lose a lot of HP here. They will fire off the fly, but a pretty costly misplay by the opponent, not keeping track of the Malamar energy, and it bites them in a pretty massive way. In comes the Frostlass, predicting the opponent would be blind, switching out. It's a Chestnut in the back, and that heads-up play means that this game is going to end up being a win. That is so well played. Now, oh my goodness. The combo with the Shadow Rock Wrecker. Does it KO? It does. Down goes Chestnut. In comes Talonflame, and the Talonflame just stopped tapping. They're just giving up. 0 bubbles on the Breaking Swipe. Down goes the Talonflame, and that's a good game. Moving into the next match, very awkward lead, Shadow Rhyperior into Shadow Jumpluff. The safe switch Frostlass, hard punished with the Blastoise, and this game is looking like an incredibly tough one to win. Blastoise, 4 to the first and 3 for the rest, can always outpace. So this is a very safe shield for the Blastoise, as no matter what happens, there's no amount of baits that lets Froslass win this, but they no-shield for absolutely no reason. They lose switch advantage, and now this game could get a little bit tricky. But we now see why they no-shielded. They have a Shadow Drapion. Shadow Drapion up energy can put in an incredible amount of work. There's going to be a pivot into Malamar. They throw energy, and I do think this is a misplay from the opponent. They could have just saved this energy and instead brought in the Jumpluff, and the Jumpluff would have done fine into the Malamar, and they could have saved Drapion up energy to beat the Rhyperior. But instead, they end up not switching out until the Rhyperior hits the field. Rhyperior going to take quite a lot of damage here from Acrobatics. It should survive it, but we will see a shield come up. And Rhyperior, no baits here. The opponent already tried to call one bait and got absolutely deleted. Rock Wrecker is no-shielded. They keep no-shielding, but they just win this game now. They just double up on moves, but they didn't. They didn't. Oh, they misremembered the Froslass energy. They got scared. They farmed up to 7, not 8, and that cost them the game. The opponent, despite no-shielding all those nukes, could have still won, but that's why counting is so important, as unfortunately, their Drapion did not get enough energy. Moving to the next match here, leading into a Sand Slash, the safe switch into the Marowak, and it's highly likely this is going to be a double slap team. Bone Club is going to do big damage. I like the no-shield because switch advantage isn't particularly important as long as you can leverage an energy advantage, because Shadow Marowak is going to take quite a bit of damage, and now this can potentially set up a pretty nice farm. In comes the Malamar. Malamar would love to get a big farm down here, as this energy is so threatening into basically every Pokemon that's not a fairy type. Malamar gets that full farm down, up so much energy. The opponent is forced to bring in the Sand Slash, and Sand Slash is about to get instant deleted. The opponent will never be shielding this move because they know there's back-to-back superpowers. In the back is Gastrodon staying in with the Malamar, but Malamar was debuffed from the superpower. Malamar lost so much health from those few Mud Slaps. Breaking Swipe is going to be shielded by the opponent. They get the farm down here. And for Malamar, it cannot survive a Mud Slap, so the game comes down to this. Can this superpower knock out its charge attack priority? Come on, Shadow Malamar. Shadow Malamar, superpower does not KO. As close as it can get, but the opponent tanks it on 1 HP, body slam KOs, and unfortunately that is game over. Moving into the next match, Shadow Rhyperior into Shadow Sableye. Sableye, a Pokemon that was so common nearly every team to start the season. With the rise of Diggersby and the meta edition of Tinkaton, Sableye is becoming a lot more difficult to use. Sableye, Foul Play, is going to be shielded up. Rhyperior going for the Breaking Swipe. Opponent catches onto a Galarian Corsola. How can they be running this ABA weak to Diggersby? Banking of the Breaking Swipe for later. In comes the Shadow Malamar, and Shadow Malamar will look for a nice healthy overfarm in this matchup as Nightshade is going to connect. But since it's debuffed, it's not nearly as threatening as it typically would be. Back-to-back Foul Plays reached here by the Shadow Malamar. Foul Play is going to connect. Down goes Corsola. What do they have in the back? Is it Triple Ghost with it? Annihilate maybe? No, it's going to be Jumpluff. Malamar very close to 2 more Foul Plays here. Foul Play number 1 is going to be shielded. Going for Foul Play number 2, but cannot get there. In comes the Shadow Frostlass, but here's the problem. Shadow Acrobatics is going to do huge damage. We're going to see the no shield. Can Frostlass hang on? Barely. In comes the Sableye. Sableye does end up letting a free Mud Slap through as it goes for the Foul Play. Rhyperior is going to get a pretty nice farm down, and Rhyperior is just full sending here, hoping against hope. The opponent decides to call the bait. Opponent is going to end up committing the shield, and they fire off their charge attack instantly. Can Frostlass make a move? Frostlass is very low here. Frostlass is able to hang on. Frostlass not even going to hit all the bubbles because it knows it's a Shadow Avalanche. It's still KOing anyway. Moving into the next match, Shadow Rhyperior is going to be met with a Clodsire. This is an amazing lead. Mud Slaps will add up. Opponent safe switches into a Corviknight. No great response available here, so Rhyperior choosing to stay in this matchup, building up to the Rock Wrecker, baiting with the Breaking Swipe. Opponent did end up committing the shield there. The shield icon did not display, but they did end up shielding. They're going to go for the Iron Head, and now Rhyperior is going to switch out and send in Malamar. Shadow Malamar has an incredible matchup into Corviknight, as you can basically, with 2 Foul Plays and the Psywaves, KO Corviknight. So we are going to see the Malamar overfarm quite a bit, and now unleash the Foul Play. Foul Play will connect. Corviknight is barely able to hang on, and Corviknight is going to fire off another move. This can set up farm for the Shadow Frostlass. In comes the Frostlass. Opponent is going to pivot, sending in a Furret, and Furret down on energy here is going to get outpaced anyway, but now will actually get its fast move denied. There's the switch into Rhyperior, unable to get the Rock Wrecker as the opponent will be able to fire off the Trailblaze. Oh, they actually bait with a Swift, but Rhyperior just gonna full send this Rock Wrecker. Can Furret hang on? No, they cannot. They're gonna get immediately KO'd. The opponent could send back in that Corviknight, but the Corviknight's so low they might get farmed down. They're forced to bring in the Clodsire. There's a switch into Corviknight, hoping for a catch, but that's just not going to happen. Back in comes the Clodsire. Let's see this resisted Rock Wrecker damage. Rock Wrecker lands, big damage. Opponent's just realizing they can never get enough moves. They could have knocked out the Rhyperior, but then they lose to the Frostlass. So there's just never a way that they can win that game. So they decide just to not fire any moves, so that way the game ends faster. Tough lead in the next match, Rhyperior into Dugong. The safe switch into Malamar is unanswered, the opponent staying in with the Dugong, so Malamar may as well look to get some chip damage or a shield with the foul play. Opponent commits the shield, they want to debuff before they switch out of here, so Dugong Icy Wind is going to connect, and now there's a switch into Gastrodon. Gastrodon going to be immediately met with a superpower. Unfortunately, this is a one-stage debuff superpower, so for Gastrodon, it's a pretty easy survive. Now this is where things do get a little bit tricky, because obviously you are going to have to deal with that Dugong at some point, choosing to send in the Shadow Frostlass. Frostlass going to respect the potential Earth Power here. Opponent, oh, they're actually on Water Pulse. So Water Pulse, more or less, very, very similar vibes, as they're going to make a second Water Pulse here, unfortunately, and that is going to grab the final shield away from the Frostlass. Opponent going to send back in the Dugong. Dugong, this Shadow Ball is going to hurt. Dugong ends up no shielding. They switch locked it, which means Rhyperior gets a big farm down and does get to exit pretty close to a breaking swipe. The opponent is now going to send in Swampert as their final Pokemon. The Rock Wrecker here is tempting, but since it's the Shadow Swampert, I think you can probably just go Breaking Swipe. I mean, these Mud Slaps are doing so much damage. Another Breaking Swipe is reached. The opponent attempting to overfarm. They need a move for the Frostlass as well, and they just know that they cannot get there. Everything gets Mud Slapped down by Rhyperior, and that's going to be game over. Rhyperior versus Wall Range. Rhyperior cannot escape from the ice types. There's the safe switch into the Malamar. Malamar will get outpaced here. I'm very surprised the opponent didn't just fire off the Icicle Spear instantly. I think that's a pretty big mistake from the opponent. They could have fired off the Icicle Spear, got big damage or a shield, and then looked to send in the Talonflame. But instead they end up banking all the energy. Malamar has already forced 2 shields in this match, and it's still going to be able to connect with a foul play. So they still have all that banked energy in the back to try and potentially get those shields back, but I think the opponent could have played this beginning of the game a lot cleaner. In comes Rhyperior. Rhyperior will get a nice farm down, looking to switch into the Frostlass, hoping for a catch of an Icicle Spear, and that's exactly what happens. The opponent, despite having the team comp advantage, getting outplayed here pretty significantly. Frostlass makes the Shadow Ball. There's going to be a catch onto Golisopod, but they needed to switch this in sooner as Golisopod just takes way too much damage. Golisopod, we're actually going to see them fire off the charge attack as Frostlass stops tapping, because Kesu knows the win con is with Rhyperior. Rhyperior is going to get the Mud Slap farm down and will be able to make the Rock Wrecker, and the opponent, it feels like they really could have won that game, but unfortunately misplays mean that it's going to be a loss. Shadow Rhyperior staring down a Talonflame once again. Talonflame staying in this matchup for now. Rhyperior farming up. Opponent just going to throw on alignment here so that way they can guarantee the first shield of the match before they look to switch out. They go for a flame charge. They're actually not switching out here, and Rhyperior is going to go for a breaking swipe bait. Will the opponent decide to call it here? No, they will not. They end up shielding. Rhyperior is going to play to the CMP tie, anticipating if the opponent threw on alignment once, they would probably do so again. Malamar is going to be the safe switch as a Poliwrath hits the field. Now that's a Pokemon I haven't thought about in absolute ages. But Malamar is going to be answered with the Shadow Drapion, and Drapion will get to pick up the knockout here with the Crunch. Very nice overfarm there by the opponent. Crunch is going to pick up the knockout. In comes the Frostlass. Frostlass going to have to commit the shield. But a Poliwrath in the back, not something that Rhyperior is hoping to see by any means. But I'm just surprised to see a Poliwrath altogether, because it really feels like Poliwrath, with all of the nerfs it's had over the years, it had its moment in the sun. It really does not do a lot now, and the opponent realizes that. They try and call a bait, and Poliwrath just ends up getting nuked by a Shadow Ball and then farmed down by the Rhyperior. Hopping into the final match, Shadow Rhyperior into Shadow Dragonite. The Shadow Frostlass save switch answered with a Clodsire. How weak is this opponent to ice? The opponent, I believe, only farmed up to a Sludge Bomb here, but I definitely don't fault our battler for shielding. Anytime my opponent, at least in my battles, throws a move that's like one off of a nuke move, it can force me to second guess my counts. Maybe I missed a fast move somewhere, and I will often end up shielding. The opponent had a Lapras this whole time, so they just ended up making a really unfortunate misclick in this game, as they had a really good answer to the Lapras, and instead, they end up making a pretty significant misplay. Aggressive pivot into the Malamar is going to bait back out this Dragonite. As long as Shadow Rhyperior still has a shield, this game should still be a win. We are going to see the no shield by the Malamar, understanding the situation. Now you can just send in the Rhyperior to look for the world's most incredibly aggressive Mud Slap farm down. Rhyperior is going to be shielding up as Dragonite will go for the superpower here. Dragonite gets farmed down. The Rock Wrecker is reached, and that's going to be good night for Lapras. Shadow Rock Wrecker, Lapras, I don't care if it's one of the bulkiest Great League Pokemon. It's definitely not surviving, and that's a good game. All in all, these were some incredibly fun battles, so many thanks to this battler for sending them in. As I mentioned at the start, Shadow Rhyperior by no means a Pokemon that should run in the Open Great League if you care about your elo. But I really like seeing trainers who have hit their goals for the season, especially in the final weeks, not really caring about their elo, saying, you know what, I'm just looking to have some fun with Triple Shadows. If I climb, I climb. If I tank, I tank. And with a new season only about a week and a half away at this point, honestly, maybe even closer to a week away, I'm very excited to see what Pokemon will be kind of grabbed out of obscurity and suddenly become real meta contenders. We saw it with Lapras, where Lapras was completely unplayable, now to arguably one of the best Pokemon in the entire Great League and Ultra League. We saw something similar with Grumpig, Cradilly, so many of these Pokemon that, I know in Grumpig's case, it was one of the lowest ranked Pokemon on PvPoke, and then in the Retro Cup, it was the best singular Pokemon in that meta, and it absolutely terrorized that meta to the point where Furret and Grumpig, people were cursing those Pokemon's names. So I'm very excited. Let me know down in the comments if there's a move update that you're hoping to see, and then we can kind of revisit this comment section once we do have the new season update to see if anyone's hopes for move updates became a reality. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoy watching content like this, please do consider leaving a like on the video and subscribing to the channel if you haven't. Any special thank you as always to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is genuinely so appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.